Hi, Tom Gully from The Tom Gully Show here, and let me tell you, there's no euphoria quite like Metal Euphoria with Metal Maiden Vicky, Saturdays from 3 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern, only on SonicAsylumRadio.com.
Welcome back to the beauty and chaos of live radio. That is Metal Euphoria, and I'm your hostess, Metal Maiden Vicky. You know, I apologize for those little glitches before. Sometimes my encoder and weird things happen that I have no control over, but looks like we got it all worked out, and we're ready to rock and roll. So I'm going to run down everything that I played during my last set, and I kicked it off with music from my featured guest of the day, and that is Alex Cortes from NOIR L.A., and I played the songs Ghosts of Gettysburg, and that was the first song that I ever heard from NOIR L.A., and I will get into that in just a little bit, and that is from the album The Truth Is on the Cutting Room Floor. And then I played one of my favorite instrumentals from the band, and that is Schizophrenic Daydream from Twilight Aftermath. And that song just speaks to me on many levels. I think it's just an incredible piece of music. Even George Neal, our very own George Neal, from Detroit's heavy metal horror band Halloween, he considers Alex one of the best bass players that he's ever heard, and which is really cool coming from George Neal, a longtime bass player himself. He loves Schizophrenic Daydream. And then I played It Would Appear As Though, also from The Truth Is on the Cutting Room Floor. And then you heard The Garden Grim. And that was one of the acoustic songs performed by NOIR L.A., and that is off of Twilight Aftermath. And then you heard Black Rat, which is one of my favorite songs. And then Temper Tantrum in C Flat. Yeah, very cool. Also from Twilight Aftermath. So, with all of that, I want to welcome back to the show the ever so creative, brilliant mind of Alex Cortes. Welcome back, Alex. Great to have you back on the show.
I was trying to think of something like witty or unique that I could say, but I couldn't think of nothing, so I'm going to be predictable and say thank you for having me back. Isn't that what they all say, pretty much?
Well, only the ones that I have back.
Right.
You know, I mean...
Well, that's what I meant, yeah.
Pardon me, not everybody gets to come back on my show. No, I'm only kidding. I'm not like that in any way, shape, or form, and everybody knows that.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure, I would just want to ask in the chat room if the volume is okay and everybody can hear us just fine. It looks like we got all the glitches taken care of, so we're a little late for the interview, but the interview is still going to run about an hour. And what I'd like to get into first, Alex, is I want to let the listeners know a little bit about our background in particular. Now, this is going back to 2017. I was tuned into one of our former DJs here at the station, Kevin Cortes, aka Metal War God. He had you on his show as an interview. He had actually heard the song Ghosts of Gettysburg, really dug it, and got an interview. And I was tuned in that evening, and I really liked what I heard. I liked what you were talking about, and I ended up, picking up your two albums. And then a year later, Kevin had you back on his show, and that's when you and I started to kind of become more friendly. You were reaching out. I ended up getting you on my show. And then we've become really close friends ever since. Meeting for the first time in 2018 when I flew out to Los Angeles to go to the NAMM convention in Anaheim. I met you for the first time out there because you are a Los Angeles native. So it was very cool to have somebody that knew the area with me. And as we all know, I mean, we could do a whole interview on just NAMM itself. But, that could be for another time. But I just wanted to give people a little background as to our friendship and how it's progressed. And, you know, it's pretty cool. You know, music always connects people, and that's one of the wonderful things about music.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, oh, yes, absolutely, without a doubt. On top of that, I think, though, over and above music, you know, you and me were lucky enough to connect at kind of a, I don't know, maybe some atheists in your audience might not understand this, but, you know, you and me also connected on like a deep kind of spiritual, esoteric sort of level, so that's just that much better. But yeah, and you know, as you've heard me say 1,000 times, you know, it was fortuitous on a whole bunch of different levels. Not only because we have so much in common with music and all that kind of stuff, but you never had a brother. I had an older sister, but we were not close, and she's no longer with us. So you know, that fit like a hand in a glove for both of us. That worked out very well.
Absolutely. I agree with that. You know, you are like the brother that I never had. I mean, even though I am, as you know, a little sister of the Pi Alpha Nu fraternity, and I have a couple of hundred brothers, if you will, but this relationship is different. This is like, you know, having a real brother. I mean, you've helped me in times of need. When I had my knee surgery, you came out here to help me. I mean, that was just incredible. I could not have gotten through that time without your assistance. So, you know, it goes a little above and beyond. And yes, we do agree on a lot of spiritual things, and our minds are very open to all sorts of things that go on in the universe and on the world, and that's awesome that you can connect on somebody.
Yes, it is. Well, yeah, of course it is. Of course it is. And then, you know, I mean, music is only one of several things that we have in common. And over and above that, I would say that, you know, the things that we have in common far, far outweigh the few things we don't, you know. And I mean, realistically, there's nobody on earth you're going to have everything in common with. There's nobody in the world that you're going to agree with all the time. Hell, I don't even agree with myself all the time, for that matter. But you know, over and above that, yeah, the positive far, far, far outweighs the negative. Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely. We have Wolf in the chat room, and he says, "Alex, I live down the street in Escondido, San Diego, North County. I worked in L.A. for years."
Oh yeah, I'm familiar with the area. I've spent a lot of time down near San Diego and surrounding areas. Yes, I'm familiar with it.
Well, especially the zoo, correct?
Actually, the San Diego Zoo, I have been to maybe 4 or 5 times in my whole life, not nearly as much as the L.A. Zoo, and, I mean, we've talked about this before. Yes, technically, I agree, zoos are unethical, but I'm a fucking wildlife fanatic, and I'm selfish. There's no other way I'm ever going to get to see the animals in the flesh except by that route. But, no, most of the time that I was in San Diego, it was not related to the zoo, but I really like San Diego quite a lot. I was actually considering moving down there at one point. To a large degree, it seems like it has a lot of the best aspects of LA and not nearly as much of the negative.
Now, it's about, what, 2 hours south of where you are?
Roughly, it depends on, you know, what route you take and how fast you're driving, but I would guess, I mean, don't quote me on this because I'm not 100% certain, but I think it's about the same distance as, say, from where you are to, like, Albany.
Okay, right, about 2 hours. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's about that. I've never actually looked it up, so I don't know the exact distances, but that's what I would guess. Or the same as, like, from where you are to, say, southern Jersey, I would guess.
Right. Well, it depends where in southern Jersey. You can drive for hours through Jersey, and it's not fun. If you want to go down to the Jersey Shore, I mean, to put it in perspective, for me to drive from where I am to, let's say, Delaware, that takes 3 hours, and Baltimore would take about 4. So maybe to get to the end of Jersey, you're looking at 2.5, something like that.
Yeah. Well, again, I'm just throwing out guesses.
Yeah.
I haven't actually looked it up, but yeah, it's about L.A. is almost. I mean, not exactly, but L.A. is like almost. Well, no. Actually, I guess I was going to say almost dead in the middle between Frisco and San Diego, but you know what? That's not true. It's quite a bit closer to San Diego, but anyway.
True.
Yeah, those are the three main cities in California, unless you want to include Sacramento. You could include that too, I guess. But
that's where the 8 is Enough family lived.
That's also the capital of Cali.
I know. But that's where they lived in Sacramento.
Yes. Yeah. The show was actually filmed in L.A., but they were supposed to be living in Sacramento. Yes, that's true.
I always wanted to visit San Diego. When I was younger, do you remember those magazines like Teen Beat, Tiger Beat, right? You remember all those?
Sure.
And they would have pen pals on the back and you could write to people. Well, I had 2 pen pals, one in Texas named Tina, and this other girl who lived in San Diego named Brenda. And I thought it was so cool. She was this pretty blonde girl. We used to write each other all the time. Me and and I always wondered whatever happened to those 2 girls, Right. I remember their last names, but I tried to search on the last name, but couldn't find anything. I mean, I'm sure they're married or whatever have you. But yeah, it was really cool. I'm like, wow, you're all the way from San Diego? I mean, when I was like, 11, 12 years old, I was like, wow, that's cool.
Right.
And she thought it was cool that I was from New York. It was like, wow,
right.
So there was always a way to connect people, right?
That was also, long before the internet and what have you.
Yeah.
So something like that was, calling somebody in another part of the country was ridiculously expensive back then. So, having pen pals was about as good as it was going to get in a lot of cases,
Well, remember, right? Don't call till after 7:00.
Oh well, yeah, and it was crazy. It was ridiculous. I mean, for me to even call another part of L.A. was expensive back then. It was crazy. When it was all landlines, it was ridiculous.
Yeah, and it was
bald-faced capitalism at its absolute worst. Because it didn't cost them that much, but they charged it because they could.
Oh, because they could.
That is.
What do you see? There's memes that go around about Ticketmaster and their costs. And I love the last one. It just says, and an extra $1 just because we can.
Right. Yes.
It's kind of like when I was working in HR, we had Pennsylvania workers because we had stores in Pennsylvania. And we had to deduct $2 a week from every Pennsylvania employee just because they worked in Pennsylvania. Even though they were paid out of New York, for some reason, the state of Pennsylvania, they make $52 a year. Or no, it was $1 per week, I think. So they make $52 a year on every Pennsylvania employee.
Right.
It's weird.
We're supposed to be talking about music here, and you know how I am, so don't get me started.
I know, and you know what? And I apologize to the listeners because...
Theories. Don't get me started on conspiracy theories and all the different forms of evil that capitalism can do.
No, we don't want to talk about that because I shy away from all that crap on my show. But I'm just saying, it's just... We get off on tangents, so I apologize to the listeners. But, it makes for good radio anyway, because as you know, my interviews are formally informal, and they can go from anything that I would normally ask a musician to off the wall, and sometimes conversations take us into other places. So it's all good. It's all good. But what I want to get into with you, Alex, is... I want to go back to your musical beginnings. Now, I know you grew up in a very musical family. If you want to kind of get into that first, and then how you progressed into wanting to be a musician.
Well, not my mom. My mom's side of the family were not musical at all. My mom's side of the family, they were just alcoholics, rageaholics. But my dad's side of the family, my dad came from a family of 11 kids, first of all, and my dad's dad was from Andalusia, which is southern Spain, and I don't know how many of your listeners will know this, but that's where flamenco comes from, that region of Spain. And maternal grandpa, my dad's dad, I never met him because he was dead by the time I was born. But he was, he not only knew how to play guitar, but he was like a blacksmith, a literal blacksmith. Like, you know, I mean, the blacksmith stuff he did was like how they would have done it back in the Middle Ages, and he he was an artistic genius, this man. And then on top of that, my dad and a bunch of his brothers and sisters were all flamenco guitarists and flamenco dancers. And as a matter of fact, my uncle Rene is considered one of the like top dogs within, because you know flamenco's kind of a niche scene, if you know that whole thing, but he's considered one of the best, and he's one of the most well-known of all, you know, American-born flamenco guitarists. So there was, so you know,
and his name is Rene Heredia, correct?
Yeah, right, and so obviously I must have inherited something along the lines there. I also, my cousin, who actually I barely knew and I only met like twice in my whole entire life, but one of my cousins was actually the singer for the band The Left Bank. You know, the big hit they had, Walk Away, Renee, that's my cousin.
Absolutely. I've always loved that song ever since I was a kid.
Yeah.
And who knew, right, that years later I would meet somebody related to him and tell people his real name, which is really funny.
His real name? Carmelo.
Well, I mean, wasn't he Steve?
Oh, no. His real name was Carmelo Caro.
Carmelo Caro, okay.
Right. That was his real name. He changed it. He changed it to Steve Martin because he wanted something that sounded more Anglo, that would be easier for people to understand and whatever. But that was some years before the Steve Martin we all know now was famous.
Right.
So purely coincidence.
Can you imagine people would think, oh, Steve Martin sang Walk Away, Renee? I thought he sang King Tut, you know. But no, you can watch the videos, of course, on YouTube of that song, Walk Away, Renee. And I can see similarities between you and him. And also when I've seen videos of Rene Heredia on YouTube, I can see similarities in the way he plays the flamenco guitar and the way that you play your bass, the way you hold your hand. Which is, I think, is something hereditary. I really do.
Yeah, I do too.
And some of those dancers now in some of those videos are also related to you. Is that correct?
Yeah. My aunts on my dad's side, several of them were as a matter of fact, back in the 50s, back in the early 50s, my dad and two of his brothers and four of his sisters actually used to do, I don't know if you want to call them concerts, but you know, they were actually they actually did that quite a lot, and they actually played, you know, did that outside L.A. County and the whole 9 yards, and they could have foreseeably, quote unquote, gone pro, but you know, they chose not to. But my uncle Rene obviously is the only one who stuck with it in that regard. But yeah, I think that obviously there is some sort of genetic deal going on there as far as that goes.
Oh, definitely, because he is absolutely wonderful. I've always appreciated the sound of the flamenco guitar because it's very ethnic, it's very true to the region, and it shows a flavor and a style. And you know, that's one of the things we love about music, right? It's universal, and each country has their own flavor, their own style that they offer,
right.
And it's cool to learn all these other things. So I can definitely appreciate a beautiful flamenco guitar. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, it's also one of the hardest guitar forms you can learn if you're going to do it even halfway well. It's really hard.
No, why is that? Why is that?
It's technically very difficult. You know, in fact, I would say learning to become a speed demon, like say learning to play like, I don't know, I don't know, any of a number we could name, I guess.
Like Tom Herrera or Kerry King.
Well, any of those guys, George Lancher, any of the Speed
right, any of the Shredders, yeah.
There's many we could name, and I mean, I'm not taking nothing away from them. That's, they're great musicians too. But I think it's actually even easier to do that well than to do flamenco guitar well. Because, all the weird chords, all the weird hand positions, and then, not only that, but, I mean, it's a lot easier to play an electric guitar at speed demon tempo than it is an acoustic guitar, especially an acoustic nylon string guitar. I mean, you have to really make every note count. If you're playing on an electric guitar, especially with distortion, it's a lot more, forgiving.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
So a flamenco is acoustic, considered acoustic? Or both?
No, classical, actually. Acoustic is an acoustic guitar, like as you know it, with the hollow body and the hole in it.
Mm-hmm.
But acoustic generally refers to steel string, whereas classical guitar is the same thing, but nylon strings. So only some of the strings are steel, and the rest are like made out of a weird sort of plastic.
Ah, okay. So is it the shape of the flamenco guitar that makes it more difficult to play than a regular Gibson or a?
No. It's the technical aspects.
Just the technical. Okay.
It's to really play on a guitar like that at that speed, and then not only that, but it's a lot more specific as far as different chord shapes, different patterns, all that kind of stuff. It's very difficult. But then, there are other forms of guitar that are really difficult too. But I was just, since your show is mostly pertaining to metal, I was using that as a comparison.
Right. And, Wolf says music does run in families, and that is so true. I mean, even personally, now I am not a musician in any way, shape, or form. I am just a fan, and I'm a DJ. But my dad, when I was younger, he played the accordion, and yes, the accordion, and I remember that thing in the house, and I would pick it up sometimes, and I'm like, wow. But he actually would play live and stuff when he was in college with this thing. I have pictures to prove it. And so he was involved, and he loved music. He got me turned on to a lot of, bands, but musically, it just I don't know if his father played an instrument, if my grandpa played an instrument, but my sister played the flute, and she played in elementary school and middle school, like the big drum, what do they call it, where you stand up and it's like a gong, but it's not.
I know what you mean.
The big drum. But she was really a good flute player. I would hear her play in her room, and she'd be playing to Jethro Tull, and and I'm like, wow, my sister's really good at that. And she just kind of dropped it when she went to college and never did anything with musical instruments again. However, her husband is very musically oriented. I mean, he has a whole room full of guitars and djembes and all sorts of things, mandolins, and but my mom, for a while, she wanted to learn acoustic guitar, and she wasn't bad. She took some local lessons, and what does Wolf say? Running on the power of a stolen mandolin. I'm not sure what that means. But it's true. There's a lot of musical families. The band Lilac, they are all brothers and sisters from L.A. You have, of course, the Hart sisters. Just so many. I mean, we could do a whole show on family-oriented bands and stuff. But it just comes down to just trying to get an idea of your musical background. So knowing that you have these relatives that had made some prominence in music. What prompted you to pick up a guitar? Was it guitar first? Was it bass?
Guitar first.
It was. Okay. And how old were you?
Well, I digged around with it. Called myself a musician when I really had no right to do so. But I would say seriously, late teens, early 20s. I would say early 90s is when I really started to actually apply myself and really learn how to do it. But what happened was, with guitar, I was good at playing rhythm. but I was not good at playing lead, which drove me nuts because I wanted to be A. Frehley.
Right.
I wanted to be Richie Blackmore, and it drove me nuts. And then it had never really occurred to me to play bass. But I was at Guitar Center one day. This is back in like late '80s, early '90s, and we got a bunch of Guitar Centers here in L.A. And anyway, I was at Guitar Center, and they had a Hofner bass, which is the violin-shaped bass that, Paul McCartney is so well known for.
Oh, right.
And,
yeah, that's a beautiful bass.
I picked it up just like, okay, well, the Beatle bass, I at least got to try it or whatever. And I took to it right away, and instantly I was way the hell better on bass than I ever was on guitar. So in that sense, the instrument chose me. I did not choose that initially.
Okay.
Now there's no way I could ever picture not playing bass, but that's really, it was guitar at first.
Okay, now, when you picked up a bass from the guitar, now I know basses tend to have less strings. Let's say a typical, guitar has 5, bass has 4. I mean, I know it's varied nowadays, but let's say back in the early days, it was typical.
The vast majority of guitars are 6 strings.
Oh, 6, okay.
Yeah.
I bought my
And the
first
bass is
real
4.
6-string. Bought it at the 5 time. Okay,
Right.
yeah, okay. So, but basses are usually 4, right?
4, right.
Okay, because when I was younger, sometimes when I go to concerts, I would get confused on who was the guitarist and who was the bass player. And then I learned that bass players usually stand stage right. So, typically, right, which would be our left, right?
Well, that very much depends on the band. Some bands, like somebody like, say, Gene Simmons. Yeah,
he's always on stage right. Usually,
Cliff
Rudy Sarzo.
Cliff Burton was too, but then you got people like Steve Harris that's more in the middle. So it depends. But generally speaking, usually, if you're talking about, and then it depends on how many guitars you have in the band.
Or you got Ian Hill, who just kind of hangs out in the back.
Yeah, you have that too, yes.
But what I'm saying, I guess, is, going from different strings and, obviously a different sound. My late husband Joe had a Fender P bass, 1979. Right. Unfortunately, it had new pickups, and it wasn't worth what it should have been. But it did have the original neck, and I remember Sam Ash telling me, well, we'll buy the neck from you. And I'm like, you get lost. Unfortunately, I gave it away to some guy, which is a whole other story and a whole other day, which I wish I never had. But it was a beautiful bass. Very, very heavy. I had no idea how heavy they are.
Yeah.
Now, you play a Gibson, correct?
Yeah.
And how heavy is your guitar?
Mine is not that heavy, but it's the particular model I have. There are Gibson basses that are quite heavy. The one I have is not that heavy. It's called an EB3. And this is kind of geek stuff.
That's fine. No, I love the geek stuff because a lot of my listeners are musicians, and they love to hear what other musicians use and everything.
Yeah, well, what I play is what's called an EB3, which is an SG shape, but obviously it's not an SG. An SG is only a guitar, but it's that same shape, and it's not that heavy, no. But then there are plenty of other models of various sorts that are significantly heavier. A Fender Precision bass or a Fender Jazz bass, those are the two main Fender basses you see the most often. They're definitely heavier than what I play, but then, like I said, there are also various Gibsons you can play that are quite a bit heavier than what I play too. So a lot of it's not just so much like the brand name. A lot of it also has to do with whatever particular model you're playing.
Okay, and so your current model again is the E. What is it?
EB3.
EB3. Okay, say that 10 times fast. And I know Gibson is your go-to guitar for years, which is great. Because Gibson has had some up and downs over the years, as we know. And there was another guitar I know that you really that you like, that you fancy. Let's say when we were at the NAMM convention, there was a guitar that you sat down and played. It was a beautiful guitar, and I don't remember the name of the manufacturer.
I don't remember off the top of my head either.
It started with an M. And they had a whole booth and a whole wall full of their various guitars, and you were able to take one down and play it for a little bit.
Martin?
Yes, Martin. That's it.
Well, that's an acoustic guitar, yeah. But yes, I love them too. With acoustics, there's actually more than one that I really like. I do love the acoustic Gibsons. I do also love Martin, but then Guild makes great acoustic guitars. With acoustic guitars, there's actually several different companies that make really great guitars. As far as electrics, I mean, it's not like I will not play anything other than Gibson ever.
Right. Yeah.
But I mean, I don't give. I am not hung up on labels or brand names. I'm not like, okay, I have to have this particular car or I have to have this particular pair of shoes, and I don't care about none of that. I would say Gibson is the only brand name that I am somewhat hung up on. That's the only one.
Okay. Well, that makes sense, because being a musician, you do find that you fall into one particular brand. Some people are Fender people. Some people are Les Pauls.
Right.
Some people are,
Sure.
What's the D one I'm trying to think of? Oh, gosh. My friend James would be upset with me. It's a big guitar. It starts with a D. Not DW, because that's drums. But anyway, so you decided you'd much rather play bass, and you were a lot happier with that. Now, when did you start deciding that, hey, you know what, I'm pretty damn creative and I want to start writing some songs and some lyrics and maybe try to record something? When did all that kind of start for you?
Well, I started writing lyrics, not any that I ever used, but I started writing lyrics back before I was even a teenager, late 70s, early 80s. And then, once I knew how to play, or once I could do it competently, then, writing songs was the most natural thing in the world. It was almost like I didn't have a choice in a way, I mean, it was like, once I knew how to play, one of the first things I ever did was write a song. And then, as far as if I had the, back in the late 80s, early 90s, recording was a much bigger deal back then, and a lot more difficult, and a lot more, a lot more of like a lot more of an unachievable kind. I mean, it was a real ordeal back then to record anything. I mean, even to record some shitty little demo was like a major undertaking and could be really expensive. But I mean, it pretty much, if I had my druthers, I'd have been recording back in the early 90s if I could, but at that time I wasn't anywhere near having the means to do that kind of thing. And then it was purely by happenstance. I made friends with my friend Joe, who I'm still friends with now. But anyway, me and him, and as it happens, this was obviously, the powers that be were on my side, because it was like, totally meant to be, completely kind of, in the right place, right time. But I met Joe, and me and him started hanging out as friends, and he was not only a musician too, but he was like this major raging computer geek, and he had this software. He didn't even pay for it. He got it free off some news group that he was involved with. And he showed me this software, and that you could record directly onto the computer, and it sounded just as good as, the more traditional methods doing it by tape and whatever, if not better. And I mean, I was absolutely blown away. I was a latecomer to the internet. I wasn't doing internet yet at that time. But And I asked him, I says, oh, and by the way, by then I had started using a drum machine, which, if you don't mind me tooting my own horn, I'm very good at programming this drum machine, and I'm very good at making it sound like real drums. And
yes, you are. I have to say that you are.
Trying to record live drums is an absolute nightmare even now. So that wasn't going to happen. That was one of the reasons why I started using the drum machine. And if I had my way, I would have rather it been a live drummer, but that wasn't possible for a whole bunch of different reasons. But anyway, by then I had the drum machine, and I had used it to record a couple little demos here and there and whatever. But I asked Joe, I said, well, do you think maybe we could record a couple of my songs just as, another demo? And it was his idea. Well, why don't we do an entire album? And I'm like, shit, gotta ask me twice, and the rest is history.
Right. And that's a great story because, the two guys that are in NOIR L.A. with you now, as they may not have been part of the recording process for the albums, but they do live shows with you when that happens. Yeah. So they do have, some input, but basically NOIR L.A. is your creative project. It's your baby.
Yeah.
And, just so the listeners know, I met Joe, who he's referring to, when we met at the NAMM convention, our last day there. Alex took me to Venice Beach because I love Venice Beach. When I went to visit California after I graduated high school, my dad took me on a pretty cool trip up the coast of California, and one of the places we stopped was Venice Beach, and I just fell in love with it. I told my dad, I said, just buy me a little boutique right here. I'll be fine. No, don't worry about me. Just leave me here. And he was like, Vicky, I can't leave you here in Venice Beach. But so years later, Alex knew that. And he says, well, my friend Joe still lives there. He lives like, you can walk to Venice Beach from his apartment. And I'm like, holy crap. So we went, and it was just awesome. Like, it was just as I remembered it from the 80s. They still had the big cage, Muscle Beach was still there. And I was like, wow, I always thought that was just, back then. But no, Muscle Beach still existed. And the boardwalk and the stores and the pot and the incense and everything was still the same. All the street performers and the beauty of the beach. Just a gorgeous, gorgeous, nutty place. We hung out at Joe's apartment. So I actually saw where you recorded the albums, which was very cool. He has a great setup. And it was just a fun afternoon. Great way to end a week in Anaheim, just to spend a day, messing around in Venice. I'm just always thankful to you and Scott for that, because that really just made a fantastic week even better.
Yeah. Well, it was just as enjoyable for me as it was for you. Absolutely. The whole thing, like you were saying, we could do a whole interview just about, the time that we went to NAMM.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was quite magical. But I mean, anyway, if you know anything, and some of your listeners who are, musicians or artists themselves will know what I'm talking about. If what used to be involved in recording anything, okay, especially if you're talking about a full band, and especially if it was going to be of any decent quality, and how crazy freaking expensive it was. The fact that you can make Goodbye Yellow Brick Road in your living room now is really incredible. I mean, it's like, pinch me and remind me I'm awake. It's like, when you think about it, because a lot of people, I guess, who have never aren't familiar with that whole world, have never engaged in that kind of activity, probably wouldn't be aware of it. But I mean, especially for a musician, artist, songwriter, whatever the case may be, the technology they have now is stupendous. It's incredible.
Oh, I can imagine in today's world what people are doing. Just the fact that you can have a band with band members all over the world, and you can get together on Zoom, record your parts, their parts, and get it all together as a song as an album. I mean, how incredible is that? That would have been impossible when we were growing up. Just absolutely impossible.
There was literally no way to do it.
I mean, I shouldn't say impossible. You could have had somebody go to another country and hang out and record an album. Absolutely. You know, I know that happened a lot, but seriously, and look what happened during COVID. So many bands went to doing that, like filming parts of songs or whatever, not necessarily recording, but, you know, they wanted to go out and do shows, right? Nobody could do shows. So it's like, well, I'll play in my house, you play in your house, you do your parts, and we'll put it all together for a Zoom video, and we'll play it on Facebook. And a lot of bands were doing that. And then Facebook got privy to it, and they decided to start charging. And then everybody stopped. And it was like, you know, you had to ruin it. As Wolf would say, jerks. But Wolf says, my friend lived 3 blocks from Venice Beach on Raymond Street.
I know where that is.
Okay, yeah. And I remember going into that, we went into that Native American store, which I love, and I'm glad I took the photos, because remember, I stopped short in my tracks when I saw my mom on the Indian braids display. Right. And you were like, what's wrong? And I'm like, that's my mother. I'm like, to a T. And when I showed you the real picture of her, it was like, oh my gosh, you know, even my mother was like, how did my picture get in that store?
That's one of those 1 in a million kind of experiences.
Oh, it was wild, yeah.
You know, in the past, people might have, and some people still would refer to that as coincidence, but I don't think it is. I don't think it's coincidence at all. And you know, as far as like how it happens, why it happens, and why it only happens sometimes and not other times, I have no idea. But those kinds of things, I mean, those sort of experiences, that's all, you can't pay for it. You can't buy it.
No, and you know, I don't believe in coincidences either. Things happen for a reason. We were supposed to walk in there, and I was supposed to see that display, because my mother wore those braids forever, and I still have her original braids. I kept them. The leather ones with the tassels and everything. And, you know, that was part of her for the good part of the late 70s to the early 80s. And it just floored me. I mean, I would have gone into that store anyway, because I like Native American artwork and jewelry and all that. So it would have appealed to me anyway. But just seeing that display, like, I had no idea that those were still sold, and in so many different ways. I mean, my mother would have been like, oh my God, I need a pair of all of these, you know? So
Native American art of all that kind of stuff that you're talking about is popular all over the world. It's not even just here in the States.
Oh, absolutely. Wolf said, did you eat at Ye Olde King's Head on 6th and Ocean?
No, that's Santa Monica, no.
Oh, okay, because I remember we walked pretty far down the boardwalk, right? We were getting close to Santa Monica, but I remember you said there was a fine line that you got to be careful at night. If you keep walking, to Santa Monica during the day, it's cool. But walking, once you pass the boardwalk of what's Venice, it gets a little shadier until you get to Santa Monica.
I never had that issue personally, but that could be true. But what he's talking about is an English style pub that's in Long Beach, not Long Beach, Santa Monica, and it's not far from the Santa Monica Pier. So no, you and me weren't really.
Okay.
I mean, that's pretty close overall, but not real close, like in so far as like where you and me were, and what, you know, where we might venture off from,
right on the Venice boardwalk.
From Joe's apartment, whatever else.
Yeah, I didn't want to go too far down. I was like, I can't go to Santa Monica. This is, you know, but yeah, they probably had good fish and chips with mushy peas, I bet.
I would bet, yeah.
Now, what did we eat? We ate Subway.
Yeah, we did.
We ate Subway. But
there's one right there near Joe's apartment.
Yeah, and it was fine. But it was cool.
Not because there was anything special about Subway, but it was there and it was closed. It was convenient. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. But So going back to your recording, so Joe starts helping you with this recording, and you were able to do not one but 2 albums in that environment. If you want to talk a little bit about that, your first album and your second album, when they came to fruition.
Well, yeah, I mean, the first album, once I finished that, then I had it. But,
well, what's the name? Tell everybody the name of the first album.
Twilight Aftermath.
Okay.
Which, by the way, in case anybody's wondering, had nothing to do with those stupid fucking vampire movies for teenage girls. I had that title long before the movie.
Yes, it did.
Anyway,
Twilight used to mean really cool things.
Well, yeah, but anyway, so when I was done with Twilight Aftermath,
Sparkly.
again, it was done, but I kind of really didn't know what to do with it because, like I said, I wasn't really active on the internet at that time, and then not only that, but, making the music, making the art, and I'm sure at least some of your listeners who are artists themselves are going to know what I'm talking about here. Making the art is actually the easy part for me, but then promoting it, selling it, getting other people on board with it, that's a whole other ball game, whole other fucking ball of wax altogether. So I really didn't do much with it, and then without going into detail, I went through a period where I had a problem with alcohol. So so as far as me recording the second album, Truth is on a Cutting Room Floor, that was some years later that I did that, and basically the reason why I was able to do that was that for a couple of reasons. First of all, I finally got the whole alcohol thing under control, and so people that were sick of my sorry ass were willing to hang out with me again, and me and Joe were hanging out, and he had some new equipment he wanted to try. He had some new software he wanted to try, so he said, okay, we'll do another album, and the rest is history.
Very cool. That was a huge help, and you learned a lot through that process.
Oh, tell me about it.
So much. I mean, how to use that software, how to fine tune, like you said, the drum machines, playing your live recordings of the bass, getting, now did Joe help with some of the guitars, or was it the other?
I did. I played everything, and I sang everything, and I programmed all the drum machine stuff. But I did actually have Joe helped out a bit here and there, not like a lot, but a little bit here and there with some of the guitar parts, and then a little bit with bass, tiny bit, not a lot. And then my other friend John Worley, he played some of the leads too. Yeah, he actually lived in the same. I actually knew him before I knew Joe, and he lived in the same apartment building. So I did have some help, but for the most part, it's pretty much all me. And the songwriting and the ideas behind it, the lyrics, the whole concept and everything that makes up what a song is, that was all me. But I did have some help.
Okay. Wolf says the internet has made promotions much easier, for sure. And he says, Alex, I'm glad you got the booze under control. And it's, because the older you get, it doesn't, get any easier, as we know, with our addictive personalities, No,
it isn't. And luckily for me, I can't do a lot of that stuff, I mean, whether it's drugs or alcohol or, junk food, whatever. I can't do any of that on any kind of regular, consistent basis, because for me at least, the consequences are quite swift and severe. So, and that's good in a sense, because that keeps me from doing it.
Right, exactly. I mean, I remember when my mom quit smoking cigarettes, and she said, I would always picture a big, disgusting ashtray filled with smelly butts. And she goes, and I guess she got conditioned to almost want to hurl. So, and then after a while, that was it. She was like, I just don't even want to look at one anymore, because she did a cold turkey. But, but it's true. You look at certain things all right, I might enjoy this for the next hour or two, but how am I going to be tomorrow? I'm going to feel like a piece of shit. That's what's going to happen to me tomorrow.
Oh, God, tell me about it.
You know, and that definitely outweighs the fun you might have had for a few hours the night before.
Yes, that does completely outweigh any enjoyment you might get out of it. But, you know, how people like say Keith Richards can do what they do for years and years and years, and they can still function, and that whole idea, that whole concept is completely foreign to me.
Well,
how anybody does that, how anybody, you know, I mean, I know that there are people who are functional alcoholics, functional drug addicts, whatever.
Sure.
I'm not one of them. I'm not one of them. If I was drinking or doing drugs on any kind of regular basis, I would be absolutely useless.
Yep. I can vouch for that. And, you know, speaking of Keith Richards now, hasn't he had like 3 blood transfusions or something over the years?
He actually, from what I understand, he had several.
Yeah, so they've rejuvenated his ass over the years.
Well, he was wealthy; he could afford it. But yeah, he used to have to. He used to have to back in the '70s, I guess. You know, when he was doing Smack. He would have to, in order to be able to go on tour, he would have to get a blood transfusion so that, you know, when they took a blood test, they wouldn't detect any smack and blah, 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 blah. And then, you know, and then, yeah, and if you've ever, I mean, since we're on a tangent about old Keith, if you've ever seen the promotional vid for It's Only Rock and Roll, I mean, his teeth are black. Literally black.
Really?
Yeah. And then.
See, now the man is rich enough. Replace your friggin' teeth. You know, the days of veneers are here. You can fix that shit.
He eventually did, but then on top of that, what he also did was, in order to he used booze to get off smack, which Eric Clapton also did at one point. And then Keith was just, you know, a raging alcoholic and a, you know, 3-pack-a-day smoker for years and years and years. But whatever the case may be, I mean, first of all, how it is that he's not dead yet is a miracle. But on top of that, that could never be me. I mean, if I came anywhere near that amount, as far as mind-altering substances, I would be, first of all, I think I'd be dead pretty quick, but even if I did manage to live through it, I would be totally useless.
Oh, I know. And it's funny, I mean, it's not funny, but it's funny that you just said that about, you know, that you're surprised that he's not dead yet. And Wolf just says, well, Keith is actually dead and no one has told him.
Well, yeah, that's true, too.
You know, and it's like, and didn't he fall out of a coconut tree a few years back? Like, what the hell was all that about?
I don't know.
And the man lived. He was something like in a hotel room or something, and he climbed out onto this coconut tree.
I don't know. I haven't heard that.
Yeah.
But I was using him as an example. But, you know, I mean, he eventually got cancer and died. But Lemmy too is another perfect example.
What do you mean he got cancer and died?
That guy was
Keith
drunk
didn't die.
Lemmy?
No, we're talking about Keith.
No, I know. I switched over.
Okay, I'm like, what the hell? I'm like, where did I not miss this?
Yeah, no.
Oh, Lemmy. Yeah, well, Lemmy. I mean, Lemmy abused everything, drugs and alcohol, and he died of cancer. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, he was, you know, a heavy smoker, and he was drunk and on meth both. Every minute that he was awake. And the only reason I bring him up is because, again, he was functional. He was still able to, you know, write songs, still able to play, still able to do all that kind of stuff. Yeah, but you know, like, so I was just using him and Keith as examples, but somebody like me, oh my God, if I was using and drinking anywhere near like those guys, I'd be a freaking zombie.
Yeah, I mean, look at Ozzy. He's been well preserved. I mean, it's just amazing.
Yeah, how some people can pull it off, and some people can't. I can't. I'm not one of those people. So,
no, it's true. You know, and some people learn their limitations, some don't, and you know, but. Yeah, I don't even know how we got off on that tangent, but
right.
So we were talking about, okay, so you record these 2 albums, but it wasn't ready to like really do anything with them yet. So when did you actually decide to put them out to the public, and how did you start to do that?
Well, I was ready to do that as soon as I was done with the first album. It was not that I wasn't ready, it was that I didn't know how. You know, I mean...
and what year was this again?
This would have been 2002, 2003.
2000. Okay, so the internet was still fairly young, but been around enough.
Right, and I hadn't really gotten into the internet yet. You know, I was born in '68, so like you, I didn't grow up with the internet, so I really was kind of indifferent to it at first. You know, I didn't really care about it. That has all changed now. The internet is like fucking smack to me now, but that wasn't the case back then. So it wasn't so much a case of not being willing. I flat out didn't know how, and a lot of, you know, again, any musicians or artists listening will know exactly what I'm talking about. I mean, making music is one thing. Selling it and promoting it is an entirely different ballgame. Entirely different. I mean, those are two entirely separate talents. You know, there's, in many respects, there's different from each other as having musical talent and having talent for flying a fucking airplane.
Right. You know, and it, those two albums now, you write music for yourself because obviously it comes out of you. It comes out of your lyrics. You know, there are some bands that record for the masses, what they think the masses want to hear, not necessarily what they want to do, which is okay in some parts. Now, there's a lot of bands that have gone back and forth. Some albums are clearly albums that they've wanted to put out because that's theirs, and other ones are more, you know, going to play to the masses. But your music is very unique. You have definitely your own sound. All of your songs are different and can fall sometimes into metal, into more hard rock, into more classical, with maybe even some jazz undertones. Your vocals are very different, and it brings a uniqueness to your music. Now, a lot of these songs and a lot of the what's the word I'm looking for? A lot of the meanings with these songs, even the songs that I played prior to the interview, which I'm going to run down again. Song "Ghosts of Gettysburg." Of course, we're talking about, you know, the horrible War of 1812, the Civil War, right? Civil War, and how that, you know, those fields are still said to be haunted, yes. Haunted, as you know, and I believe that. So many people lost their lives, and I have no doubt that there are so many ghosts floating around. And incidentally, you have a great YouTube channel now, NOIR L.A., and you do have a video for Ghosts of Gettysburg, which is really, really cool.
Right.
And then I played Schizophrenic Daydream, which is completely instrumental, and it just kind of takes you on a journey in a completely different way. You know, we're going from Ghosts of Gettysburg, where we're looking at something that happened in history, to now a schizophrenic daydream and what goes on in your brain when you're going through these emotions. And as I was mentioning earlier, there's certain parts of that song that really hit me, and the first time I heard it, I actually teared up because I had deja vu really strongly from like another time, another life. And I still can't explain it, but it's there, and it's in a couple of areas within that song. So, you know, I just love that one. And then you would go to It Would Appear As Though. Now, what is that? What are you portraying in that song?
You mean the lyrics or the music?
Well, both.
Well, the music, it's standard kind of a up-tempo metal, I guess you could say. I mean, I wasn't like specifically trying to write I wasn't trying to write a song from a particular genre or nothing. But I mean, let's be frank, there's nothing new in music now. Rock and roll's been around a long time.
Yes, there is.
I mean, there's nothing really new anybody's going to do. So, you know, I certainly don't claim that any of my stuff is like brand new. Nobody's ever done this before, you know.
Oh, I disagree. Even though there's an infinite amount of notes, there's still...
What I would say about that particular song is it's definitely kind of, I guess you could say kind of 80s non-hairband metal, style, but then the lyrics are about, I don't know how many people listening have seen Wolf of Wall Street, but that the lyrics are about that, and, we've talked about this before. There's certainly nothing wrong with money in and of itself, but that song is about, people who use it to gain at other people's expense. People who use their position to screw others and have no qualms about it and almost even feel good about gaining at somebody else's expense, that kind of thing. So that's pretty much that one there.
Okay, and those are people that we definitely do not care for.
I don't know.
No.
And not everybody who has money's like that. There
no,
are
they're definitely
people
not.
Who have money, and money in and of itself is not bad, but it's more like what happens when I think like they say, alcohol doesn't cause you to be a certain way. It brings out who you already were in the first place, and I think money can be that way
Interesting.
too.
That's very interesting. I haven't heard it quite that way before. I don't even think you've ever said that to me, that alcohol doesn't make you act that way. It brings out more of who you are.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And that's true. When I think of all the years and all the drunk people that I've encountered.
Yeah.
We're talking 4 decades of drunk people, right?
Yeah, sure.
Wow. And what was the second part you said?
Money can do the same thing.
Yes, money. Okay, because, and even power. Power is great. Technology is great. If you use it for positive good. If you use it the right way. If I was in power of anything, even the word power is like so, I don't know, commanding. And you want, and you don't want to be in control, but having power can be very dangerous or can be very good. And we've seen both sides throughout history, as we know. We could go off on another tangent about that.
Well, and it's not with that kind of thing, what you're talking about. We're not only talking about like Hitler and Stalin, but, how many examples do we see of that just in everyday life and, in the dealings we've had with people who were not famous or were not, in positions of power and whatnot. And as far as that goes, I think personally we're all somewhat schizophrenic. We all have at least 2 personalities, if not 4 or 5, maybe even more. I think all of us are Gemini to some degree. But even at times, people who are fundamentally good people can still do bad things under the right circumstances. And, we've all, even the nicest of us, even the best, kindest, most generous of us all have skeletons in our closet, some more than others, but we've all done things we're not proud of. So yes, absolutely. 100%.
Oh, absolutely. Even somebody like me. Yeah, I don't have a halo over my damn head all the time. I might be a very nice person and a good friend to have, but, we all have those moments and we all have those sides, and there's certain ways we react to certain people and certain parts of our personality come out. And, and for the most part, you try to control and just have the best parts come out. But, there's people out there that are just cringy and douchey, and they test you when you're out there in the real world, Every time I have to go out for errands, I'm like, oh, let this be positive. And it usually is, it usually is, because people are very cool. You start chatting with people at the grocery or the CVS or whatever.
Right.
You compliment them on their hair, their clothes, and to me, and I don't do that just for the hell of it. Like, even if I really don't care for it, just, if I see somebody with like cool purple hair, I'd be like, you have really cool purple hair. And they're like, oh my God, thank you, and it just kind of makes them walk away with maybe a little bit of lighter step in their day, and instead of saying, your hair looks stupid, you're too old to have purple hair, what's wrong with you? No, I could be 95 and have purple hair, and I'm going to look badass, you know? Like,
right.
you know?
Well, also, unfortunately, a lot of the time too, we don't always have as much control over our emotions as we would like, and so sometimes, when your more negative emotions get the best of you, sometimes you even if you're ordinarily a very nice person, even if you're ordinarily the nicest person that ever came down the fucking pike, what can happen is that sometimes you don't even, first of all, in that moment, unfortunately, you don't care. You know that you're being a shithead, you know that you're being an asshole, but you don't care. That happens sometimes, unfortunately, but then also a lot of times it's not till later that you realize, oh, wow, I acted like a real douchebag.
Right.
So,
yeah, exactly.
So no matter, even if you're frickin' Gandhi, we all have bad days. We all have bad moments. None of us are perfect. But I think my personal opinion, one of the greatest tests involved in so far is being born and being forced to, because in many respects life is like it's like going to school. It's like a test, and it's like a burden in many respects, not completely, but it is. But a lot of like how well you deal with it and how much control you choose to have or force yourself to have over your more negative emotions is a very big gauge, very, 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 very great example of what kind of person you are. And, the other thing is, too, is, just because you have a negative thought does not mean you need to say it.
Right, exactly. You pick your battles, you pick your words.
Right.
There's a time and a place. There are some things you might encounter during the day that just really kind of bugs you, but you just let it go.
That's the other thing too. That's kind of that's a whole nother subsection of what we're talking about. But then also, your emotions. You and me have talked about this before. A lot of the way our species has evolved, and I'm not atheist. I do believe in God. I do have spiritual beliefs, but I'm not religious at all. But at the same time, I do also believe that human beings are animals. In fact, chimpanzees are more closely related to us than they are to gorillas. You would never know that by looking at them, but as far as DNA, yes, genetically they're closer to us than they are to gorillas. And so we are animals too. With us, I think, because we have the advanced brain, and because we can, say things like 2 + 2 = 4, 4 + 4 = 8, 8 + 8, 16, 32, 64, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. We pay it's great in some respects, but we pay a very big price for it. And a lot of that is that, and I think, this is even true of a lot of animals a lot of the time, but I think with us even more, the human mind is too goddamn complex for its own good. And you don't always have as much control over your more negative emotions as you would like. And I can only, I have no doubt other people listening will be able to relate to this, but I can only speak for myself. I find myself sometimes getting irritated and angry over some of the stupidest, most minor shit you have ever. It's almost like I'm standing outside of myself saying, it's almost like I'm looking at me saying, Jesus Christ, get a fucking grip. Don't be stupid, But those kinds of things happen. And so, you can only do the best you can insofar as, okay, well, just because I'm feeling a negative emotion does not mean I need to make it somebody else's problem.
Right, exactly. But some people do thrive on that.
Yeah.
Like they leave the house and they're already in a pissed off mood, and they're just going to go piss off people all day long just because they're in that mood, and it doesn't matter,
Sure.
And it just, I don't know.
Well, yeah, this is also something you and me have talked about before. personal story. My mom was an excellent parent in many respects, and I'm not at all ungrateful for that. But my mom was also a rageaholic, and she loved to fight, and she loved to argue, and I mean, it wasn't every day, it wasn't all the time, but it was, and she made herself sick for years with her anger management issues, because, when your amygdala is pumping out cortisol like that, it's very toxic to the body. Anger is supposed to be something you only feel once in a while, but, her whole family are all alcoholics and rageaholics. But anyway, the point I was making with that is that you can think those things. You can have those emotions. You can have those feelings. But it's a case of think about it, don't act on it. And, I would also say a lot of what I learned from my mom was how I didn't want to be. A lot of what I learned from her is how not to be in my own life. And, I'm not perfect, but, I can honestly say that, like, when I'm out in public or whatever, I am never nasty with strangers. Never. Absolutely.
No, you're not.
Never.
And I can vouch for that. You're very pleasant with people, and...
Oh, you aren't either. And there's a number of reasons for that. Okay, for one thing, there's a number of reasons for that. For one thing, I enjoy positive empowerment more than negative. For another thing, it's much better for me physically and mentally if I'm nice to others, strangers. And then not only that, but to me at least, if you're having difficult feelings, or you're angry, or you're irritated, or you're this or you're that, we all go through that. Everybody without exception. There's no getting around it. It's all part of the human mind.
Sure.
But you do have a choice about, okay, I'm going to think this, I'm going to feel this, and that's as far as it goes. Nobody else has to be sucked into the vortex of my negativity.
Right. And that's a good way to think, because you're being courteous and you're thinking of others in your own state of mind at the moment, which is, I'm pissed off at this, I'm annoyed at that. This shit sucks. Now I got to go out and deal with people. But once you're out there, you're like, you know what? These people don't deserve my wrath and my own personal.
No, and especially because I know we all have a spoiled temper tantrum throwing child within us that never grows up completely.
Oh,
and
sure.
I don't think any human being that has ever lived didn't escape that to some degree. But also the other thing is a lot of the time I'll get angry or I'll get irritated over really, really, really stupid, really minor. I mean, to call it unimportant is an understatement. And so, it's like I don't even know why I'm feeling this at this moment. And sometimes I don't even know. Sometimes I can't even answer you. I can't tell you why I'm feeling this or that or whatever. But, more important, because I can't prevent myself from having negative emotions. I can't prevent that. That's never going to go away completely. But I do have a choice about, okay, this is a negative emotion. These are negative thoughts, blah, 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 blah. But you know what? Nobody else needs to be dragged into it. Especially because it's not their fault.
Right, exactly. And, you do have a song that I'm going to be playing after the interview, Negative Empowerment. Which, a lot of people do have. And, you experience, I think, a lot of it when you're out in retail and people, have problems with whatever the case may be. If they're returning something didn't come off the price right, or, whatever it may be. And over the years, when I've been behind these people, I've kind of learned myself to don't get so annoyed. Don't get pissed off that it's making my wait longer, because if I was that person and I was having an issue, I'd want it fixed too. You know, like whatever money they're losing, whatever's happening, it's probably valid, and it's going to take a moment for the store to fix it, because I'd want the same treatment, you know, like, because I've had that issue too. I mean, I think we've all held up a line or two for some reason or another.
Of course.
You know,
well, yeah,
and I get it, because people are having issues, and...
Well, that also depends on, you know, you can have a problem, you can address a problem, you can bring something up with an employee or a manager, or whatever the case may be, and you don't have to be a fucking shithead about it.
No, you don't have to be a Karen, as they say, right? Which I feel bad for Karens, because I've known a lot of Karens in my life, and they're all very nice. But...
well... We all have our bad moments. None of us are perfect, but I think it all depends on what is the foundation of your behavior and the way that you choose to interact with others.
Right. You know? And if you generally...
And the song Negative Empowerment, that's just all about, I've had to deal with people at various times in my life. Luckily, it wasn't the majority, but it was often enough to be noticeable. And, the whole mentality is no one has suffered as bad as I have. And therefore, I'm entitled to treat people however I fucking well feel like it. Like, the world owes me something because I had a bad childhood or whatever, but then also a lot of those people, they use, first of all, they get the term rageaholic. They get an adrenaline-based buzz off their anger.
Yes, like taking a hit of speed.
Luckily, that's not something I've experienced a lot, but I've had that experience myself. But then also, not only that, but they use their temper tantrum throwing baby behavior to control those around them. And that's what that song is about.
Okay.
And I wasn't, that song is about people like who do that regularly, not people who have a bad day here and there.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Very big difference there, too, because
none
of us are perfect.
The songs going back to the songs I played prior to the interview was Black Rat, which I really like. And when you told me the idea behind that, because it kind of came to you as... like an acid trip, how a lot of people, you look at Jefferson Airplane's White Rabbit, and how it's such a cool trip, and most people have cool trips, and nothing goes wrong, and you just kind of float through your next 10 to 24 hours, however long it takes. Yeah. But then people have a bad trip.
Sure.
And so instead of a white rabbit, you're going through with a black rat, and that's no way to go through a trip. And thank God, and I'm saying this, yes, on live radio, and I'm a lot older now, and I haven't done this shit in decades, but thank God I never had a bad trip, and I always had a fun one, and was always with good people, and I'm very thankful for that.
Same here. And first of all, I have nothing against rats at all, but a white rabbit would tend to give most people positive associations, whereas a black rat would be mostly negative associations. And a lot of the inspiration for the lyrical part of that song is the song White Rabbit, by Jefferson Airplane. Great song, absolute classic.
Sanctuary does a great cover if you've never heard it.
No accident, it ended up being a hit. But again, most of the songs, that one and most of the other ones that I can think of that are, either directly or indirectly about like, an acid trip, psychedelics, whatever, usually, they focus more on the positive, the fun, the trippy parts of being on psychedelic. To the best of my knowledge, I mean, I'm sure somebody probably has somebody somewhere, but I've never heard it. But nobody ever wrote a song about a bad acid trip. And even the song, it does not specify acid, but psychedelics are heavily implied. But you and me both have issues with anxiety sometimes, and that's terrible enough when I'm completely stone cold sober. I don't even want to think about what it would be like to have a panic attack while I was on psychedelics.
Oh, well,
I don't even want to think about it.
Well, but back when I was doing that panic attacks weren't even in my realm of thought. Like I was la la la. It was the 80s. I was having a good time. High school, college, pretty much after college, I stopped doing it. Maybe a couple of times, but really, but it was just a whole different experience. And, and I remember being with somebody who was in a bad trip, and it was really hard to talk to them because I was like, oh my God, I'm going to start bugging out too, because they're bugging out. But we managed to help them, and, we surrounded them with love and everything, and they were cool. But luckily I've never had one. I've never had, so Black Rat to me is like, because people can get really freaked out and dark if they, and I think maybe it's the mindset they have maybe before they take it.
It's very hard to say.
Because I would never be a person who would give it to somebody if they didn't know.
Yeah, that's pretty odd.
Like Go Ask Alice. Go Ask Alice. She didn't know who button, who's got the button. She didn't know what the hell that meant. And she ended up getting the button, and she freaked out. And well, we all know. I mean, I haven't read Go Ask Alice in years, but, some people don't know. And I think that is so wrong. If you're going to give something that they're going to put in their mouth and ingest, you need to tell them what the hell you're giving them. Or else, that's not proper etiquette at all.
Well, no, and you've heard the term bad acid trip. That's what that is. Basically, you are on acid or some sort of psychedelic,
mescaline, or
whatever the case may be, and you slip into a panic attack. And the human mind is so unpredictable, even at the best of times. I mean, there could be any of a number of reasons why that might happen.
True.
But anyway, to get back to what we were talking about, I don't even want to think about going into, having full-blown anxiety while you're on psychedelics. That would be horrid. But anyway, it's...
Well, especially when you tell somebody you're going to be like this probably for the next 16 to 24 hours, and they're like, what? And it's like, I'm sorry. I mean, mescaline was a little bit shorter. Mushrooms, of course, were shorter. But again, people, I really don't know what I'm talking about, but I'm just Metal Maiden Vicky, who does a radio show, but but acid, just, you better not do anything for the next day, or two, like, you just don't. I mean, you can have plans as long as they're fun, but don't do anything like of responsibility.
Right. Tell me about it. Yeah. No.
Just have some good tunes, whatever, good friends, and that's it, man. And that kind of leads me to the next song I played was Temper Tantrum in C flat. Now, that was kind of like an angst song that you needed to get out.
Yeah, well, the whole tune is, it's anger, venting anger, and, all that kind of, basically not about any one particular subject, I wouldn't say, but yeah. That's what that is. Sure.
And Wolf says in the chat room, when he said earlier that your music was interesting, he says, exactly, this is why I said it was interesting. I can hear a lot of different things in there. The curse of playing horn and hearing every form of music. Because he's very intuitive with his hearing himself, with music and everything. He's a big aficionado of music, of movies, of horror. He has quite a display of equipment, musical equipment, and players, and recording, just a lot of stuff. Yeah, I think you guys would have a lot to talk about.
Cool.
But I put up your bio too on your YouTube channel in the chat room, and I'm just going to read it here. It says L.A., California, USA is the current stomping grounds of musicians Dimitri Mandalore, Shane Wood, and Alex Cortes, who are making tidal waves in the international music scene as the guitarist, drummer, and bassist, vocalist, respectively, of NOIR L.A. With Alex as songwriter, they make up the musical monstrosity that is rewriting everything we once thought we knew about music. Okay, so that may be a bit of an exaggeration, but you get the point. Known for their dynamic stage presence, musical virtuosity, and compelling songwriting, the group is steadily becoming a force to be reckoned with within the known universe, with roots firmly planted in the vibrant and extensive music culture of Los Angeles. Fans can always expect a taste of Alex Cortez's unique writing styles with the incredible diversity and authenticity of genres within an overwhelmingly metal context, each offering a fresh perspective and a glimpse into the genre's artistic evolution. or something like that.
Right.
I love it.
Right.
And I also love, I think you have it on your Facebook page, the greatest thing since hot showers.
Hot water showers, yeah.
Hot water showers, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I remember that you've had that on early on, and I thought that was funny when I first got into your band, and I was like, that's funny. I could see that you were you had a humor about it. You're like, I know my music's odd. I know it's different. I love it. If you dig it, cool. If you don't, cool. It's music you needed to get out of you because you are so creative in so many ways. I mean, for people out there listening, not only can he write music and lyrics, but he's an artist as well, like drawing, and he's very, very good at drawing animals in particular. You're very big on wildlife and very, very knowledgeable about animals all over the world. And you're a really good artist, I have to say.
Oh, thank you, much appreciated. As far as what you read there, I cannot promote the band or myself or the music or any of it without mixing in a little bit of humor. I always have to, because I think metal, metal always has to, even if it's not intended, metal always has a certain element of cheesiness about it, always.
Right.
And in some respects, the bands that are trying the hardest to avoid that are the ones that are the cheesiest. I won't mention any names, but like a lot of the bands that are real into the whole Satan thing. I mean, it's like so cheesy it makes you want to laugh more than it scares you. I'm not going to mention any names, but anyway, you get the point. So, as far as me, somebody's going to ask me, okay, describe the band, or describe your music, describe this, describe that. Yeah, there's always going to be at least some kind of humor mixed in there. Because for me personally, if I take anything too seriously, it's always going to lead to negative outcomes, even if it's only inside my head, or even only if it only has to do with various uncomfortable emotions I might end up feeling. But with stuff like that, at least, I always want to have a sense of humor mixed in there.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's important, because it just shows another side of you as an artist, as you as a musician, that, you do have a sense of humor, even though some of your songs may focus on more of a grim side, brooding, macabre, shall we say.
Yeah.
Because as some of my listeners may remember, NOIR L.A. was not the original name. The original name of your band was Macabre L.A., and you made a decision not that long ago to change the name of the band. If you wanted just to talk for a minute about that.
Yeah, well, the band, way back when, I wanted to call the band L.A. Noir. Unfortunately, after I decided on that name, and I was using it for a little while, unfortunately, right about that time, 2 separate novels with that title came out, and then a very internationally popular video game with that title came out. So I was like, okay, well, I can't keep using that. I guess I could have, but anyway, I chose not to. But whatever the case may be, and then the band was called Macabre L.A. for a while. But then, not that it was terribly important. Again, I could have kept using that one too. But a couple things. First of all, there's a band called Macabre, and I didn't even know that I had never heard of these guys until I started, participating in the internet. I had never even heard of this band. But anyway, there is a band by that name, and I think they are still active, or whatever. And I got a couple different messages from people here and there about, that I was somehow associating myself with them, even though, again, when I came up with that name, I had never even heard of them. And again, not terribly important. I could have, gone on using it, but I was like, but a couple things. First of all, I did want to avoid any unnecessary associations with any other artists. Whether it's a band I like or one I don't is irrelevant. But there's that. But then also, I really liked the word noir. I thought noir was very cool insofar as it's used to describe a lot of movies, and it's used to describe a lot of novels and blah 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 blah, and it's dark without being like too obvious, all that kind of shit.
Well, a decade in time. You were really into the 30s and the 40s, yeah.
Well, I still am. But what so basically, NOIR L.A. I'm like, well, nobody that I know of has that name, so I settled on that. And now, if I find out that somebody, or some other band, or some other, somebody releases a movie or this or that or whatever the case may be, if that has that name, well, that's too bad. I'm not changing it again.
Exactly. No, you're not.
No.
We went through a lot to change your band name, but all in a good way. I put in the chat room all of your links to your various pages, to your Facebook page, the Noir Bandcamp page, your Spotify, your X, your Instagram, and your YouTube.
Oh,
so hopefully
okay, cool.
people will go to YouTube and subscribe and check out your videos and go to the other sites and stuff and pick up the albums. How much do you have them for right now on Bandcamp?
$5.
Yeah, $5 for all these songs. I mean, people, you can't beat it. $10 for 2 albums that just need to be heard, and I'm telling you, the songs that I played prior to the interview, the songs that I'm going to play after the interview. It's funny, I'm posting some AI images that I had created for NOIR L.A. a while back. And some of them are cool. They're these black and white pictures. But, so when you finally released these, you must have been so happy, like, finally I get to do this. Now, did you originally put them up on Bandcamp? Like, that was your first go-to?
Well, I didn't know about Bandcamp at first. Once somebody told me about it, then I did it immediately, yeah.
Yeah, because I feel that that's really the best place for bands to have their music up. They're fair, and they do have the Bandcamp Fridays where all of the proceeds go to the bands.
Yeah.
So, I've just always heard good things about them. I mean, it's good to have your music everywhere you can, absolutely, because you don't know who's listening, who's where, So to have it, go worldwide, I mean, we're worldwide right now as I speak, so, but...
Well, yeah, the other thing about that, too, is, Bandcamp is my personal favorite as far as that goes too, but then there are sites where you actually have to pay to have your music up, which I would not say I'm an overly greedy or chintzy individual, but I'm not going to pay for it if there's places where I can do it for free. Bandcamp lets me do it for free, so that's just one example. But then there are also a lot of sites where a lot of bands will get onto the site, but and I'm on some. I'm not going to mention any specific names, but I'm on a few sites, and it's like, this seems really kind of pointless. I mean, if I was a teenage girl, trying to start a modeling career or something, well then okay. But for bands, this is pointless.
Right, I understand.
Bandcamp to me is like the polar opposite. Bandcamp is the best deal, at least from what I've seen.
Well, what I love about Bandcamp too? Now, me as a consumer and a purchaser at Bandcamp, I obviously don't have a page because I'm not a musician, but what I like about it is I have my own page there that shows my collection. Like, you can view my collection, see everything that I've bought, and you can have followers. Like, I have, a few followers on there, and I'll get emails that other followers have bought this music. And you look at it, you're like, oh, that looks cool. Maybe I'll buy that too.
Yeah.
So it's all cross-reference and cross-promotion. And that's another part of it that I really like. Because I have bought some albums based on other Bandcamp consumers, and I'm hoping that they bought things off of mine, so it's a cool thing all around.
It's great. Yeah, it's great, and it's free. You can't beat it. Sure.
Right, and it was very easy for you to switch everything around when you made the band name change as well. It wasn't a big ordeal, which was very nice.
Yeah. Yes.
Because that could have been.
Well, I did. It was an undertaking. I had to change the names on a lot of the art. And by the way, I do all the band art too.
Yes, you do.
Most, at least not. I mean, I'm sure some do it, but most musicians / artists that I know of don't. They have to pay somebody else to do the art. They, but I do that myself. I have some computer software that's similar to to the kind that everybody knows about, but it's actually a lot less famous. But anyway, so I do all that myself too, and that was somewhat of an undertaking to have to go back and
you
change
put it all together,
change all that. But in
the
end, it was all doable. Yeah,
and that's cool, and it was doable on my end as well. To change everything around. And it's funny, I'm putting in the chat room all these NOIR L.A. pictures that I created on AI. And looking at them again, I'm like, these are pretty badass looking. I think I had sent them to you a while ago. I should try to make some more, because the more I use my AI program that I use, the more it knows me, and it gets better with text. Because at first, AI is really bad with text. Like, they spell everything wrong. And it takes a while before you're like, oh my God, they spelled that right. Yay. And I actually like the picture, the person doesn't have 8 fingers and, so, but it knows me now. So it knows what I do. And so it's cool. I try to make some more. But,
well, AI is overwhelmingly a wonderful thing. Let's just hope it doesn't eventually develop an ego,
Oh, well, I think it already has. I mean, I'm just talking about little old me creating images in a Bing website. I'm not talking about making like AI things that move around.
Well, no, I know, but I was just talking about.
I do it for good. I am not nefarious.
Generally speaking, so that, it doesn't turn into a situation like, the Terminator movies or something like that.
Oh my God.
Where it suddenly has an ego and it's suddenly all self-aware, doesn't want to do what it's told.
Oh, well, you never know. There was that other movie with Shia.
We do never know, but, as long as it doesn't come to that, then I think AI is wonderful.
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, there was another movie with Shia LaBeouf that was like that, where a computer was running around chasing them, and it was really freaky. It was really intense, like on your seat movie, I forget the name of it, but it was Shia LaBeouf, the Disney kid.
Was it?
Maybe. It was him and a girl. And they were guided by this computer, and they had to do what it said, or like all shit was going to happen. And Wolf says Alex is the Dan Curtis of metal. Cool. You know who Dan Curtis is?
What's that?
You know who Dan Curtis is, right? You probably do. He created. He was Dark Shadows, and he did a lot of other horror movies over the years. Dan Curtis.
Doesn't sound familiar. No, I'm surprised I don't, because I'm pretty well versed in that whole genre. I'm pretty well versed in that, but that name doesn't sound familiar. No.
Yeah, look him up. When he does Dark Shadows, it always comes up. A Dan Curtis production.
I don't remember that, and I've watched Dark Shadows many times in my life. For some reason, I'm drawing a blank. But
well, now you got something else to research.
Yeah, I'll check it out when we get out the phone.
Yeah, but we should start to wrap things up.
I take that as a gigantic compliment, even if it's not somebody I can spring to mind right at the moment.
Yes, well, because one of the other aspects about you is you do study and have a liking for true crime, and things like that, especially going back to like the 30s, the 40s, the 50s. That was a really cool time of true crime and all these things. So you know a lot about that. And back then, you know, I remember you saying it was very hard to find information because we had nothing but libraries and microfiche and, you know, and now it is unbelievable what you can find.
Now you couldn't view, read it, or watch it all in a lifetime.
Oh, exactly. Same thing with my music library.
Those were all things. And I know you were saying we got to wrap it up, but those were all things. I was interested in long before the internet. It was a lot more of an ordeal. It was a lot more of a struggle to find that kind of stuff back then. But you know, now that I have the internet, you know, I'm a hog at a feast now. But I mean, that was it was totally before there was any internet. It was a totally different deal. But I was, you know, heavily interested in that stuff long before I was ever participating in the internet. And also, you know, it's really hard. It's a really abstract concept, and I can't fully even explain it to myself, let alone anybody else. But a lot of that, you know, true crime and you know, gore and this and that, you know, even my obsession with wildlife, all of that, you know, is all of that is in its own way is also a huge influence on the music.
Oh, absolutely.
Even if it's not like you know, a direct influence on it, but even all that stuff that technically has nothing to do with music, for me at least, a lot of that stuff is a big influence on what I do. And, you know, I'm sure there's other people who would say the same thing. Certainly, you know, a lot of metal bands, you know, horror movies are a big influence, even if that's, you know, not technically music.
Oh, absolutely. Some bands have an entire album for
sure.
You know, for horror movies. You know, it would be interesting, maybe. I know that, and we're going to get to this in a moment, but I know that you are currently working on new material. But I'm wondering, and this just kind of hit me while we're talking about this, which is what I mean about, you know, tangents during my interviews, but have you ever thought about doing an album based on true crime stories or serial killers, or mixing the two together?
Oh, sure.
Because I know you're aficionado on those as well. So, you know, you know, like you could do one on a true crime, you know, I can't think of one offhand. I'm sure you can, but, you know.
Yeah, well, plenty of other people, you know, have done that already. And, of course, you know.
It wouldn't be like you, though. I can tell you that.
No, it wouldn't exactly. And then, of course, you know, even things like that, you know, things not like related to horror. I mean, I don't know how many people know this, but the Iron Maiden song "To Tame a Land" is based entirely on the Dune novels.
Right. Oh, well, Iron Maiden always taught us history and TV and
big into the whole science fiction.
The Prisoner.
To answer your question, I have thought quite extensively about trying to at some point do what they call a concept album, and I haven't done it. I mean, it's not out of the question that I could end up doing it at some point, but I simply cannot think of a single subject that I could stretch across an entire album.
But if you mix true crime with serial killers, or because there's a lot of true crime stories out there. I mean, I remember all of the unsolved mysteries that we watched, you know,
Sure.
You know, doing things that were never solved, or even, you know, the album covers, your one album cover, the guy, what was that? A mob, looks like a mob hit. Was that it?
Well, yes, it's somebody that was murdered. I don't know the specifics of the case, but that's a crime scene photo from the 40s. Yeah. The guy that was murdered in front of a hot dog stand is what that is. I don't believe it was anything to do with organized crime, but who knows?
Okay, well, yeah, if he was shot in the back of the head, maybe, but yeah, I just posted a picture of it again, because there was a lot of that, especially around, New York, Chicago. And I remember you telling me a lot of those pictures disappeared from back in the day. They ended up in the East River, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So,
yeah. Oh yeah. The NYPD took. This is just one example, but the NYPD took a whole bunch of glass negatives because the early days of photography they had to use glass negatives, and they had a whole shit ton of crime scene photos from New York City, late 1800s, early 1900s. A whole shit ton of it. You know what they did? They dumped them in the fucking East River. They didn't even ask anybody if they might want them. Does anybody want this? Is anybody willing to come collect this? Blah 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 blah. And I think personally, crime scene photos. Now that we have access to photography, I think crime scene photos are an enormous part of documenting human history.
Oh, definitely. They had no idea what they were doing when that happened, for sure. That years later, my gosh. Wolf says now you can view actual ancient manuscripts online. Yeah, it's incredible
Sure.
what the internet is what's out there. And the scary thing today is we don't know what's real and what's fake anymore, and that's becoming very harder with AI and with advanced Photoshops and,
Yes.
But things like that. There's a whole wealth of information, as we know, that we can read. And of course we could talk about that. But so let's talk a little bit about your the new album that you have been working on. Do you have any songs completed? Is there a working title?
Nothing, it's going to be called Negative Empowerment.
Okay.
Is the name of the album. No, none of the songs are done completely. I'm doing it all myself this time. I don't have Joe there to help me out, so it's a lot more work. It's a lot more complicated, and I am working on it. But no, I don't have any. I have drums and guitar for all the songs, but no bass and no vocals yet. So no, I don't have any songs that are done completely, but all the songs that are going to be on the album are at least partially done, yes.
Okay, very cool. Now, are you going to include the song Negative Empowerment that is on the previous album in a modern, revamped way, or?
No.
Okay.
No, it's there's two examples that I can think of. Queen had an album called Sheer Heart Attack, and then a couple albums later they had a song called Sheer Heart Attack, but the song Sheer Heart Attack is not on the album Sheer Heart Attack.
Oh, that's true.
Another example is Led Zeppelin had an album called Houses of the Holy.
Yes.
And then a couple hours later they had a couple of albums later they had a song called Houses of the Holy. So, and those are just two examples, but it's that same sort of thing. The song Negative Empowerment is not on the album Negative Empowerment, no.
Okay. All right, cool. And I know there's no timeline because you said this is very different for you, doing this one on your own. And it's been a long time since you've really delved into recording. And I think it's wonderful because it got to the point where you just had so many songs, inside of you that needed to come out. So it's good that you've started to do this again. And I am so looking forward to hearing, even the very first completed song. And as soon as I'm allowed to play it and I get the go ahead, I will certainly play it for everybody.
Oh, well, cool. Thank you. That would be awesome. And I mean, as far as like, I could, well, okay, we no longer have, now that vinyl's no longer the main format. Of course, I guess you technically don't have two record sets anymore, but I could easily, it would take a long time, but I could easily put out a 2 record set easily.
Okay,
And
that would be very cool.
That doesn't even include all the songs that I want to do covers of.
Right? Yeah, you could do a whole, like when Ozzy did that, Cover Me, or I think it's called, or he did
lots of bands have done.
Yeah, I think that would be cool too.
That are all cover songs. Lots of bands have done that over the years. Oh yeah, I could easily do that. That would be
we were talking, I think once about, you were thinking of doing like a lot of the 70s AM radio hit covers and seeing how those go, and something like that. Or
I have thousands of ideas for various songs that I could record, and how I would change it, how I would make it my own. And I mean, even if I turned around tomorrow and said, okay, I'm going to start working on an album that's all covers, even then it would be really hard for me to pick which ones I'm going to do, because the list is endless. And
I can imagine.
It's the same thing with anytime I've ever done an album, the first two and this, and I really got to decide what songs I'm going to do and what ones I'm going to leave off. And for me at least, I don't know how it is for other people, for me at least, that was always a very difficult decision making process. Very difficult.
Yeah, that's true. Just what to pick, what to do. Or even some people, I don't know how bands, if they go back and forth about even how many songs they want to have. Do they want 10? Do they want 11? No, maybe 13. Do they want to go up to 15, or do they want to go back to 7? Maybe we just want an EP. I can't imagine.
Yeah.
Or because it gets too out of hand, you have to do a double album. Disc 1, disc 2. There's even been bands that do disc 1 of their album, and then disc 2 is the instrumental of that album. Like all the songs are instrumental, which is pretty wild, Oh
well, yeah. I mean, the possibilities are endless now. You can do any of a number of things, but when I think of the terminology 2 record set, I mean, vinyl is what comes to mind for me immediately. So that's why I said that.
Oh well, true.
Technically you could, but when I think of a 2 record set, I think of Goodbye Yellow Brick Road,
right? A nice double album
or whatever. The Use Your Illusion albums, that comes to mind first. And yeah, technically you could do all that now, I guess. But since it's kind of like not a 2 record set anymore, since it's not going to be on vinyl, I guess, I don't know.
Right. Well, CDs are still very popular, even though people seem to say, what's a CD? And I see them all over the place. They're always at merch booths, at concerts, at shows. People are always buying them.
Sure.
They're all over the place.
It hasn't gone away completely.
No, not at all.
By any means. No.
Not at all. I just received a few in the mail the other day from some bands, which I'm always very thankful for. And I'm so excited because I have my new computer and I can actually burn them. And remember, we could burn CDs, and or was it burning when you? Yeah. So I'm very excited. Download or whatever I can do. So I'm very excited I can do that, because I couldn't do that on my other computer. But Wolf says, going back to when the cops were throwing all that stuff in the East River, it says, sounds like the Smithsonian throwing away archaeological evidence into the Atlantic Ocean.
Oh, a lot of people were very upset about it when they found out.
Oh, did that really happen?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought he was... Oh, Wolf, I thought you were like making a sarcastic comment. Oh, that really happened. Damn.
Well, you know what? That they took the glass negatives and dumped them in the East River?
No. What he says, that sounds like the Smithsonian throwing away archaeological evidence into the Atlantic Ocean.
Sure, I don't know about the Smithsonian, but I'm sure plenty of stuff that would be historically valuable has been tossed over the years. For
maybe you were you just making like a similarity, Wolf? I think that's the way I took it, but
I think that was a comparison,
yeah.
But nevertheless, I mean, when you hear about that kind of stuff, it you can't help but get a little bit irritated, because it's like, I mean, you didn't even try to see if anybody wanted it. I mean, if it's personal stuff and you don't want other people having it, that's one thing. But I mean, shit, crime scene photos from 1905. I mean, how can they not think that that's going to be valuable to somebody? Hell, there are people who would even pay good money for that matter, you know?
Right.
But, you know, unfortunately, you can't always expect other people to be considerate, and you can't always expect other people. Some people might literally think, I just didn't think anybody else would want it, you know.
Exactly.
But
and now, once it's in the
just-
East River, nobody's
It's in the East
getting
River,
it.
yeah.
I wouldn't jump in that water if you paid me to jump in that water.
Yeah, well, as far as I know, nobody's going to make any attempt to go down there and get it. But of course, you know, nowadays, you know, old vintage crime scene photos are. I mean, there's the availability nowadays is just crazy. So, you know, that particular instance where they were dumped in the East River isn't as big a deal now, but when, you know, people found out back in the early 90s that the NYPD had done that, a lot of people were very upset.
Oh, absolutely. I can imagine. Especially people that were fans, like you. I mean, not that you were alive during then, but you know what I mean. Like, if you were,
yeah,
you would have been
of
like,
course.
well, damn, you know.
I would have found someplace. I would have found someplace to store those frickin' things by any means necessary, and I would have gladly taken those if they were offered.
Yeah, true. Well, there's a couple of more things.
If I'm going to be a greedy capitalist pig about it, for that matter, I could have taken those and sold them on eBay.
True, yeah. Wolf says it is a real thing, and they were doing it to cover up evidence.
I
Smithsonian.
don't know why they would have done that, because by the time they were doing that, those late 80s, early 90s, those crime scene photos were like,
No,
like
he's talking about the
100.
Smithsonian, whatever they were throwing away. He says that was real.
Oh,
And they were
okay.
doing it
Well,
to cover. I don't know. Wow.
I haven't heard about that, but, you know,
So
I
much-
suppose people could have any of a number of different, you know, motivations for that kind of thing, but, you know.
True. So much nefarious things. But,
Well, yeah.
anyway, we got to wrap things up because I'm going to be going a little bit over tonight. Well, not a little bit, but yeah. But that's okay. I don't mind. A couple of more things I wanted to talk to you about. There's another thing I wanted to bring to the listeners' attention. I think it's something very special, this very special talent that you have that I've never known anybody else to have, and I probably never will. And you are always spot on, and it always amazes me because I try to trip you up on it, and I can't. You happen to know the astrological signs of musicians.
Oh, a lot of famous people, yes.
And you don't really know why, right? You just do.
For some reason, that's something I have an easy time remembering, and I'm not like a big follower of astrology by any means, but I think there's some truth to it, and so I do frequently find myself looking up what zodiac sign this person is, that person, you know, actors, musicians, celebrities, you know, politicians, whatever, and for some reason, that's something I happen to have an easy time remembering. That's not the case with every subject, but that is one of them, yeah.
Exactly. All right. So if I was to say like James Hetfield,
Leo.
See, yeah, August 3rd. All right. I'm gonna try to pick somebody like.
You're Leo, so what? Do you want to know some other musician Leos?
Sure. Well, I know Rob Halford is. Gene Simmons is.
No. Rob Halford and Gene Simmons are Virgo.
Oh, they're Virgo. Oh, they're right after. Right.
They're at the end of August, both of those,
Okay.
yes. Let's see. As far as famous musician Leos, Bruce Dickinson. Let's see, Phil Lynott. Who else?
How about Lena Horne?
I don't think I ever looked her up.
Okay.
I don't think I ever looked that one up.
She was June 30th, so I'm gonna guess
That's cancer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that was just a really off the wall one. I wasn't expecting you to.
Right.
Well,
I can't know them all, but I
But
do
you were
know
pretty
quite-
good. I mean, there was one night I was grilling you on so many, and you were just like boom, boom, boom. And I was going to like 60s bands, up to 90s bands, up to, 80s bands. And I was like, oh my God, like, how do you know that? It's wild. Yeah, well, but that was just something
I'm a geek with that kind of stuff, and as far as like famous Leos, I could name another famous Leo, Madonna.
Madonna, okay.
Yeah, and Rosanna Arquette, her too, and Robert De Niro.
Oh, great.
Okay, we're getting outside of music now, but
yeah,
anyway.
But still,
and Barack Obama.
How about Ace Frehley?
Taurus.
Okay.
His birthday is one day after mine.
Oh, shit. Okay. Wow. See that? I mean, Eric Clapton.
Aries.
Ian Anderson.
Leo.
See? And it takes you like no time. And I'm sure if I fact checked it, it would be right. I'm not even fact checking these because I know it's right. It's just so wild. But that's just something that I wanted to bring to the listeners' attention that I thought was really cool about you, in addition to all the other things.
Since we're talking about Leos, we can't forget. Since we're talking about Leos, we can't forget. Oh God damn it, Ian Gillan.
Oh yeah, Ian. Doesn't Ian and Gene share a birthday? Oh no.
Gene Simmons?
No, Ian Gillan shares a birthday with Oh, shoot. Somebody else. I'm sure it'll pop up on Facebook when the time comes.
Right.
But I know that Rob and Gene share the same day, right?
Yeah, they're both late August Virgos.
Yeah, but I think they're the same day. But yeah, Ian shares a birthday with somebody. I forget who. But
a lot of bands I like too. If you asked me, I could tell you all their astrological signs.
Well, I know you know the Beatles.
Well, that's probably the easiest of them all. But like Slayer, for example, the classic lineup of Slayer, the one that's on all their best albums, are 2 Geminis and 2 Aquariuses. That's
quite an interesting combination.
Wow. Yeah, well, that's how that ended up.
Okay.
As far as that goes. But yeah, I mean, the Beatles, that's one of the easiest. Hell, even a lot of people who know nothing about astrology, that's Libra, Gemini, Pisces, and Cancer.
All different. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, 2 of them were air signs and 2 of them were water signs. Okay. Oh, another famous Leo, Mick Jagger.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, there's actually a lot of Leos a lot of celebrities that are that astrological.
Oh sign. Yeah, definitely. But it's just amazing how you just know these things. It's wild.
I have a really good memory for certain things and certain subjects, and not so good for others. That happens to be one of the ones that I have an easy time remembering. I have an easy time recalling. That's not true with everything by any means. But the other thing too is, I'm also a fucking geek with a capital G. So, even before there was any internet to speak of, if I was even the tiniest bit interested in any subject, no matter what it was, I would beat it to death. I'm still that way now.
You are. You're very thorough in your research and your knowledge, your quest for knowledge. And that's very cool.
I become obsessed with it, and it's like I want to read. It depends on the subject, obviously. It's not every single subject, but, whatever subjects I am interested in, I become, like, obsessed. I want to read, watch, and absorb everything about it I can get my frickin' hands on.
Exactly. Now, a couple of more questions before we wrap things up. Who is your favorite cartoon character?
That's tough. That's very tough. You know what? I can't answer that because there's too many I have loved for too many different reasons. I could not pick a single favorite. Could not.
All right, there wasn't one that like immediately popped in your head when I said that?
No, because there's too many.
Okay.
That popped into my head when you said that. And various, I like different ones for different reasons, and that, of course, all the characters, Looney Tunes. I mean, how can you beat Bugs Bunny and Wile E. Coyote and, all of them, all of them. Absolutely.
Okay. Now, when you were a kid, before you, started to delve into a lot of music and stuff, and were you an indoor or an outdoor kid?
Up to a certain age, outdoor, very much. Later on, much more indoor. I became much more of a loner, and my parents were very unhappy about it. But when I was young, I don't remember exactly when it changed, at what age, but yeah, when I was a little kid, I mean, the whole idea of sitting around the house all day playing video games, okay, I know that, the 70s was a very different time than the times we're living in now, but the whole idea of that was just ridiculous. I mean, if I didn't have school that day, I was out that goddamn door as soon as I could, as soon as I was able. But, again, that was the 70s. Very different time than what we're living in now.
Oh, absolutely. You could disappear all day and nobody worried, as long as you were home for dinner.
And not only, oh yeah, my parents had to start grounding me because they couldn't get me to come home. But not only that, but when I was a kid, I don't know, maybe it was because I was a young male, I don't know. But yeah, I was quite the intrepid explorer too. I used to go on bike rides and, and walks and everything else many, many miles away from home. And when I look back on it, luckily I was always able to find my way back. That was never a problem. But when I look back on it, this was the 70s. If you got in trouble, I don't mean like trouble with the law, but if like say you injured yourself or this happened or that, back in the 70s, if you were many, many miles from home and you were 7 years old, that really could have turned out badly. And then, also, we've talked about this before. I was quite the little daredevil on my bike, and really, looking back on it, really, I did a lot of really stupid shit. A lot of it was really foolish. But, when you're a kid, you don't know that.
No, and you were a boy, and boys...
And I was a boy, exactly.
They weren't known to be the brightest. All the boys that I knew back then did silly things. Daring things that I would be like, oh, what are you going to do? But they always lived. Maybe some scratches, some bruises. We've all had our injuries, as we know, and that's a whole other story. But, we lived through it, and I was an outdoor kid, too. I was both. I spent, I would say, half and half, Yeah. But, well... That was really cool. All right, so just to wrap things up, I just wanted to let everybody know how to reach out to you on social media. Again, you can reach out to Alex on the official NOIR L.A. Facebook page or his personal Facebook page. You can find NOIR L.A. on Bandcamp, on X, on Spotify, and Instagram and YouTube channel. Definitely check out the videos on YouTube. There'll be a lot more coming down the road and other stuff as he continues to work on the new album, tentatively titled right now. It's going to be Negative Empowerment. And we are very excited here at the station to hear new music from NOIR L.A. And, as always, Alex, it's great having you on the show. And
it's great being on the show.
Oh, well, thank you.
It was equally advantageous to both parties. Let's put it that way.
Exactly. And you've really made a lot of great strides in getting your music out there on all these different platforms, and that's wonderful. So, we're hoping for a lot of good things from all of this. So I definitely invite people to check out these links, give some likes, hit some subscribes, it doesn't...
I will be making music until I am literally not able to do it anymore. Like if I say, if I became quadriplegic or if I got thrown in jail or something like that where I literally couldn't do it anymore, then obviously I would stop. Other than that, I'll be doing it till I'm fucking dead. And, promoting it, selling it, blah, 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 is not something I particularly enjoy, nor do I think I'm really very good at it, but I'll be doing that I will always do that to any degree I'm able to do it, too. So, yes, absolutely.
Right, exactly. And, you always have somebody like me in your corner to help you any way I can, of course, whether it's personally with the radio station. I'm only 3,000 miles away.
Right.
But, Wolf says, Alex, thank you for sharing with us. I personally appreciate it. I hope you have continued success.
Okay. Well, can he hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
well, of course, he's listening to the interview, silly.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, thank you, Wolf. Thank you.
Very cool.
Is Wolf the first name or the last name?
It's just his name.
Oh, okay.
You got to go into the Tom Gully chat room sometimes during Tom's show.
Okay.
Yeah, Mondays through Fridays. I'm usually in the chat room. It starts at 8 o'clock my time. All different topics, and Wolf's usually in the chat room. Sometimes he uses his real name, sometimes he doesn't.
Right.
But,
and I assume he's an existing species. He's not an extinct species that was brought back to life through DNA, right?
No, he's not a dire wolf. He's just
he's
wolf.
Not a dire wolf, okay.
Yeah, right. Didn't see that coming, right?
Wolf or any of the other various species of wolf that are still around today.
Oh my goodness, that was wild though. It was like in the midst of everything happening, it's like, and here's a dire wolf that we haven't seen for thousands of years.
Well, yeah.
Like,
and
wow.
Now there's some people who are saying that hasn't actually happened. But before we wrap up, I'm also a tremendous geek when it comes to a lot of not only wildlife, but then a lot of extinct wildlife and what have you. And there are tentative plans to actually bring back the mammoth, if you could imagine that.
Wow. I heard people talking about bringing back dinosaurs, and I'm like, okay, but that's not necessary.
Well, I have never heard that that's actually possible.
And why would that be necessary? Like, we've already established that's not a good idea.
It wouldn't be, but dinosaurs. You got to remember that the dinosaurs went extinct about 60 million years before we were even here. 60 million. Okay, what we're talking about, the dire wolf and the mammoth and whatever else, those actually went extinct relatively recently. If you're talking about the whole totality of the history of the planet Earth and whatnot, and the thing is too is, at least in theory, they're bringing these animals back so that they can be repopulated into the wild and might make some kind of environmental difference. I don't know for a fact how much of that is true. I'm only going by what I read. But I'll tell you this right now. I'll tell you this right goddamn now. If they do bring back the fucking mammoth, oh my God, I will go to any length to see that in the flesh.
And wolves, it's been proven that they are detrimental and so important to the earth. We need the wolves. Yeah, wolf is just his nickname, but yeah, we need the wolves, and that could be a whole different story.
That's true. That's true of all. That's true of all the animals. The only animal that the planet Earth really does not need is us.
Well, you do have a point there, Alex.
All the other animals are essential to their environment in some way, even in all kinds of abstract manners you wouldn't expect. All kinds of things like, wow, I never would have thought of that. But yeah, all the fish, all the birds, all the mammals, blah 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 blah, on and on, are all essential to their environment. We're the only animal that isn't.
Yeah, we were and we're still intruding.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'll give you an example real quick before we get off the phone. They were up in Alaska. They were what happens is that these species of trout would go to a certain area and spawn, give birth, whatever, and then they would make their way back to these various ponds where they would die. And they started, I don't know why they did it exactly, but they started to cleaning out the dead fish from the ponds, okay? And when they started to do that, everything in the pond died. The pond dried up because those salmon making their way to that pond and then dying there and decomposing there was essential to that pond's ecosystem. That's one example. Another really good example is some people might laugh when they hear this, but any river that hippos live in are completely dependent on their shit. If you kill all the hippos and suddenly there are no hippos living in that river or that particular stretch of river, it will dry up.
Interesting. Oh, wow. We could do a whole show on just that.
Yeah. Like I said, human beings, we're the only ones. We don't really serve any purpose here in that sense.
In that regard, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you just gave me another idea. And if you stay on the line for a moment after we end things, there's something I just wanted to bring to your attention. But yeah, so again, thank you so much, Alex. Is there anything that you want to say to everybody out there listening before we go?
The usual. Thank you for listening. Always appreciated, much appreciated. And go check the tunes out. And if all goes well, you might get as much enjoyment or pleasure out of it as I do from all the bands that I love. If I could write the script and everything, happens on ideal terms, then yeah, that's what I would say.
Very, very cool. All right, everybody. I hope you enjoyed my interview today with Alex Cortes, the creative, brilliant mastermind behind NOIR L.A. And I'm going to play a few more NOIR L.A. songs for you, and I'm going to follow it up with Sonic Asylum Radio's Artist of the Month, Ian Highhill, and a couple of other things, and then I'm out of here for the night. All right? Yeah, we're going to go a little bit longer, but that's okay. All right, everybody. So right now, I'm going to play a little bit NOIR L.A., and this is Bluish Shade of White. Hell yeah, crank it up, and we are hanging out. Metal Euphoria, SonicAsylumRadio.com, the best underground music on the planet. Period.